Hello, I'm Natasia, and I'm standing here in the middle of the Millville Army Airfield Museum in Millville, New Jersey. As part of our aviation history video lesson series, we are here today to discuss the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. During the 1920s and 30s, the exciting exploits of record-setting pilots such as Howard Hughes, Charles Lindbergh, and Amelia Earhart captivated the nation, and thousands of young men and women dreamt of following in their footsteps. But young African Americans who aspired to become pilots were met with significant obstacles, starting with the widespread belief that black people could not learn to fly or operate sophisticated aircraft.
In 1938, with Europe teetering on the brink of another world war, President Franklin D. Roosevelt announced he would expand the civilian pilot training program in the United States. At that time, racial segregation remained the rule in the U.S. Armed Forces, as well as much of the country. Henry Harley Arnold was an American officer holding the ranks of General of the Army and later General of the Air Force. He believed that black soldiers did not have the ability to do complicated things or take leadership roles. Black soldiers were regulated to support roles such as cooks, janitors, and supply officers. Flying fighter planes was out of the question for an African American military volunteer. Under pressure from black newspapers such as the Chicago Defender and Pittsburgh Carrier, the NAACP, and First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, President Roosevelt relented in 1939 and ordered the civilian pilot training program to be open to black students. In response, by December 1940, the War Department appropriated $1 million to build a military base to train black airmen. They called the effort an experiment and fully expected it to fail. The War Department chose the Tuskegee Army Airfield in Tuskegee, Alabama. Home to the prestigious Tuskegee Institute, founded by Booker T. Washington, the new base was located in the heart of the Jim Crow South.
Well, in Alabama, I was primarily on the campus Tuskegee, and that's desegregated. I guess they're 80-90% of the students were people of color. So just have a wonderful time on the base. You go into town, it could be a different story. But I did not go in the town. I avoided going in town when I was at Keiser Field, Biloxi, Mississippi. I avoided going there. And at Tuskegee, I avoided going in town because everything that I needed was right there on the campus. I just had a pleasant time.
Moton Field Municipal Airport became the training ground for these brave pioneers. The program's trainees, nearly all of them college graduates or undergraduates, came from all over the country. In addition to some 1,000 pilots, the Tuskegee program trained nearly 14,000 navigators, bombardiers, instructors, aircraft mechanics, control tower operators, and other maintenance and support staff.
I was in a Stearman, a PT-17, Boeing Stearman. And after about 7 or 8 hours of dual instruction, the instructor said, "Okay, you get airplane so and so, and you go by yourself." And oh man, solo. So I take off. "Hey, Mom, look at me! I'm solo, flying all by myself." That was a nice one. That was another high point in my life.
The Tuskegee Airmen became the first black military aviators in the U.S. Army Air Corps, a precursor of the U.S. Air Force. In February 1944, the 100th, 301st, and 302nd Fighter Squadrons arrived in Italy. Together with the 99th, these squadrons of black pilots and other personnel made up the new 332nd Fighter Group.
Well, the 99th Fighter Squadron, that was the first group that went over. They were in North Africa at first. After a whole lot of political, so they even get an assignment to go into combat. They at first, there was no commander in Europe or the Pacific that would take a black squadron. So it took quite a bit before the people were assigned, people in the 99th were assigned to a position over in Europe. Now, we got into the war in December 8, 1941, Roosevelt declared war. And then by the summer of 1942, there were enough people finished flight school to compose the 99th Squadron. And they finally got an assignment to go to North Africa. They were under the command, they were the 313th of a group, fighter group, under the command of a guy that didn't want, a guy named Momar, who didn't want them there, but he had to take them because that's where they were assigned. And they were ignored, and they were given wrong dates and times for briefings and so forth.
The story of the Tuskegee Airmen is linked directly to the life and career of Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. The son of an Army general and a 1936 graduate of West Point, Davis was a member of the first class of 5 cadets to earn their wings at Tuskegee. He was selected to lead the new 99th Pursuit Squadron, the Army Air Corps' first all-black air unit. His inspired and disciplined leadership played a major role in the Tuskegee Airmen's success. The Tuskegee Airmen flew more than 15,000 individual missions in Europe and North Africa during World War II. In North Africa and Sicily, they flew missions in second-hand P-40 planes, which were slower and more difficult to maneuver than their German counterparts. After the commander of the 99th's assigned fighter group complained about the squadron's performance, Davis had to defend his men before a War Department committee. Rather than being shipped home, the 99th was moved to Italy, where they served alongside the white pilots of the 79th Fighter Group. In early 1944, pilots from the 99th shot down 12 German fighters in 2 days, going some distance toward proving themselves in combat.
Well, our guys, the United States invaded Italy through the port of Anzio. And our guy, the 99th, had the job patrolling the skies to keep the German fighters away from our invasion. And in a week's time, our guys shot down 18 airplanes in a week. Now, the first victory was in North Africa, a guy named Charles Hall. They were escorting B-25s or something. And they encountered the first encounter with the enemy. And Charles Hall shot down I think it was a 190 or something like that. And that buoyed the spirits up quite a bit.
The pilots of the 332nd began flying P-51 Mustangs to escort the heavy bombers of the 15th Air Force during raids deep into enemy territory. The tails of their planes were painted red for identification purposes, earning them the enduring nickname Red Tails.
The Tuskegee Airmen represented an important step forward in racial integration of the military. A number of the original Tuskegee Airmen would go on to longer careers in the military, including Davis, who would become the first black general in the new U.S. Air Force, George Spanky Roberts, who became the first black commander of a racially integrated Air Force unit before retiring as a colonel, and Daniel Chappie James, Jr., who would become the nation's first black 4-star general in 1975.
After their brave service, the Tuskegee Airmen returned home to a country where they continued to face systematic racism and prejudice.
More than 300 of the original Tuskegee Airmen were on hand to receive the Congressional Gold Medal from President George W. Bush in 2007.